Hey, everybody. Hey. Welcome to the Pyramid Science Foundation Livestream. And I just need to do a quick video and sound check with Charlie because he couldn't hear me earlier. So we're trying to figure out what's going on there. Can you hear me now, Charlie?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me? All right.
Yes. Okay.
Good deal.
Good deal. Look at that.
All right.
Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. I do hear an echo there, Charlie. Let's fix that real quick. Go into audio and echo cams to please.
Okay. Let's see.
See if that helps.
Audio.
Hello.
Echo.
There we go.
All right. Did that help?
Can you hear me still? Yep.
Okay. All right.
Hello?
We're all set. Okay.
I hear a slight echo, but okay, that's good. On with the show. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. We're here for another great episode of the Pyramid Science Foundation live stream. Whether it's through the power of pyramids, ancient wisdom, or cutting edge research, we're going to go over health, spiritual growth, and agriculture, free energy. We dive into all the ways energy shapes our world. And we have an amazing guest today. I actually found her accidentally, her and her husband's work. And I referred Charlie to her, and Charlie is connected with her. So Charlie's he knows way more about Lynn here than I do. So I'm going to let him take the lead on this. But let's bring Lynn on real quick.
Okay.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Lynn. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me here. I appreciate that. And Charlie, it's good to see you again.
Well, it's good to see you. We met over the holiday or before the holidays, and it just took us a while with scheduling and so forth. But we're really happy to have Lynn here today. I had an opportunity to spend about an hour and a half with Lynn on a Zoom session before the holidays, and I know that she's got a lot of great information today about the work that she's carrying on. That she and her late husband, joint ventured for quite some time together. So, without further ado, Lynn, why don't you? Lynn has a website called plasmaenergysolution.com, which is the place where we'll be, sending you if you're interested in the products that Lynn and her husband have put together. But essentially, they are working with plasma energy, and they have developed technologies to where they can put this energize special solutions that do not lose their energetic power over the years or over the months, and so you can reuse them. It's really a great technology. I don't want to overstep and say anything that I shouldn't, so I'm going to turn it over to Lynn and say, Lynn, if you would, please introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a little bit about Plasma Energy Solution.
Well, thank you, Charlie. Yes, my husband, Paul, and I, Lynn Schmaltz, started studying the plasma energy. Gosh, this was probably 13 years ago. And Paul was a retired veterinarian. But to give you a little background on him, he was among the first veterinarians in the country to start doing acupuncture on animals in the 1970s. Mm-hmm. And it was a very interesting journey because at that point nobody knew what it was, and they said it's all in your head, and he said, no, I'm working on horses, thank you. But he always retained an interest in unusual modalities, and worked with orgone energy along the way. Along the way in his life journey, he developed type 1 diabetes they call it juvenile onset at the age of 44. And that ultimately led into kidney failure. And so we were the dialysis team with a home hemodialysis unit for 6 years out of the 8 that he was on dialysis. He did finally get a kidney transplant, and he was no longer practicing veterinary medicine at that point. So, in his retirement years, who knew he was going to find something else that interested him? And we started studying the plasma energy. Well, what happened is it was being taught online, and the scientist had spoke English with a foreign accent. Paul couldn't understand it. I could. I said, no problem. I'll just type the class notes for you. Well, there were two classes, 4 hours apiece every
Oh,
week. And what I didn't realize until later, and I was astounded, it really was, it takes about 10 minutes to type an hour of, let me see, it for every hour, it would be 10 minutes. It would take me probably 60 to 70 hours a week to transcribe all these classes.
yeah.
And a lot of it was back and forthing. Did I hear that word right? Did I, and all that. But lucky for me, I got to learn what he was doing. And so Paul did all the linear scientific work, and Lynn was busily typing up the next classes. And at some point, we had all these energies, and we're going, well, what are we going to do with them?
Ah!
So he was really interested in the health aspect that we started hearing about. And so what we did is we took some of our very first energies and surrounded a container of filtered water and started drinking it. Now, I'll tell you what the energies are like. I'll show you what they're like. This one I've had for probably, we've had this for about 13 years. And what you see that looks like powder in the bottom
Mm-hmm.
is gas in the atomic nanosolid state. So it doesn't dissolve. And when I shake it all up, you can see,
Yeah,
it,
it looks like Ormus.
yeah, and then it will settle back down.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably now have a couple hundred different jars of things. And so that one was CO2 and zinc. And this was something I put together, and it was vitality herbs. And there are a couple different processes for extracting the energies. And the original way that he started was in a nano coating process. And I'll show you some of the now these are copper, and what nano coating is, and this is copper wire. It's all blackened.
Mm-hmm.
And what he did was to take a propane torch and blacken everything, and then it spent 2 or 3 days in a crock pot outdoors because you had water and lye in the crock pot. And that's how it set all those energies on there. And then these actually were hanging out on a fence for a couple years just to add more energy. But once the fields are all blackened on these things, they're here's some wire, and when they're blackened on there, there could be like 50,000 nano layers. That's kind of a lot to wrap our heads around.
Yeah.
So, plasma energy is the fourth state of energy, and you may hear it as 0 point energy and things like that. For a lot of people, it's a little hard to wrap their heads around. I ran across a couple of interesting statements in the last week, and I want to share them with you. One was from a man in Australia named George Cavassalis. And what he said was he's talking about creation and our conscious relationship with it. And he says, you are not going to get what is real outside of you. You are only going to get what is real inside of you. You turn inward towards your relationship with creation, unified field, and that is how you get knowledge, real knowledge. And then I also came across Dr. Yan Kin, a Qigong master, and they were actually studying his energies as he works with external chi energy. And so it just, a statement that came out of that was it is a universe where the power of the mind might be able to reach directly into the fabric of reality. Is that what we're really doing? Now, when Paul made these energies, and here was another one, and this is actually greens and veggies, and we have what we have, and it's the energy of these things. So, how do we use this energy of these things? I'm going to show you a. I have 4 or 5 different stations, and I'll show you this one because it's the smallest and the easiest.
Yeah, I just want to mention too, I know that Lynn is 81 years young and is in perfect health because of using all these energies, correct?
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. And
I've never heard a woman love to have her age publicized.
Well, I
well,
was
you know
impressed
what?
she's very tech savvy as well. It was easy.
You know, the thing is, Charlie, at some point you say, get over it. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly, exactly.
I kept telling Paul, we're upper middle aged. And he said, no, you might be because your father didn't live to be 102 and your mother lived to be 98. Mine, on
Wow.
the other hand, lived to be just past their mid 70s. So
Mhm,
we would kind of laugh about the difference there of
mhm.
whatever had gone on genetically. But so when these energies are developed, it'll take anywhere from 3 to 6 months in the whole breakdown process. But once we have the energy, then we're set. Okay. And so, what I do with them now, this is one I've got, and I keep some here at my desk. It always goes in or outside of a translucent container. You can't take these to outside of crockery. You can't put them on the outside of stainless steel. So if you notice, I put I think you can see that little
Mhm.
vial in here.
Right.
And that vial has some of the water that would create clean mouth. That's a combination. When we do combinations, and the water comes off the top of one of these.
Mhm.
And um, then when we're doing a jar of a combination, I just did one this weekend for a family member for a certain issue. And I think we used about a dozen different combinations to address what was going on with her. Now, these little vials don't wear out. And
That's
I'm going to
really important.
Yeah, that's really important to know. And as I would, the best description would be to say it's like a battery, but it's like a battery that doesn't quit.
Mhm.
Now, I am going to say that in the last couple years, I have heard some places that are saying, well, you know, this wears out and you're going to have to order more. So, what I want to say is the process that we use, the intention that we have placed in what we have developed does not wear out. And I'm I'm not looking for an ongoing subscription to the ongoing replacement
Yeah.
of something
Yeah.
that wears out. It doesn't wear out in what we're doing. So earlier when Lisa and I were setting up, one of my cats jumped up here and we were talking about, and I showed her right before we went on, my big cat showed up. They're 14 years old. They've been drinking plasma water for a good 13 years.
Mhm.
They are never sick.
Yeah.
I'll knock on wood on that. But
Yeah.
Um, they do the thing that cats do. They might throw up a hairball. That's it. And the big cat, Lisa, had a lot of anxiety issues because she had been dumped in a snowstorm as a kitten.
Mm.
She will not even step out onto a covered deck that I have. And I put anxiety relief in their water dish. And they have several vials in there for different things. And it smoothed her out. It didn't affect the other cat. The other cat is still mischievous. And so, but it took the edge off, and she didn't have to run for cover every time she heard a strange noise or a loud noise.
Hmm.
So that's one way that we've seen it help. I had a family that contacted me a few years ago, and they just said, we're just at our wits' end. Our daughter and granddaughter live with us, and our granddaughter just goes through fits when she has to go spend time with her dad. And, what is there anything we can do? So they ended up with some of the anxiety relief, and I heard back from them in a couple weeks, and they said, oh my gosh, what a difference this has made. She We have our granddaughter back, because she would come back from the visit, she'd still be upset, and they said, now we have our granddaughter back. And that was really nice to hear that. So in my everyday world, how do I use the plasma energy? I drink the water all day long, and um, now I have some in. Oh boy, I've been worked on that already. But you can see in my water bottle, I've got
Hmm.
several different containers of things I wanted to address. Let me see, Charlie. One of them could be make me feel like I'm 27, right?
There you go.
So,
I don't want to be 27 again.
no, actually,
I
I
was just
don't.
thinking that too.
I would like the physical feeling, but let's skip all the lessons I had to learn.
Exactly.
So, with the daily use of it for me, I ran across some very good information by a doctor who had been locked up under the time of the fall of the Shah of Iran, and he had gone back to Iran to help set up medical clinics and hospitals. Well, when everything changed, he ended up in prison. And people would come to him and say, Doc, I need some, I've got this going on. He said, look, I'm a prisoner. I don't have anything either. So he started recommending to people that they drink more water. In the course of the almost 3 years that he was in prison, over 3,000 people got better. And so, what his research ended up being was, if you will drink half of your body weight in water, in ounces of water a day,
Hmm.
that's going to give your body enough to work on. And so, for a 150-pound individual, they're going to drink 75 ounces of water a day.
Yeah.
And people will tell me, oh my gosh, I don't want to be getting up all night long. And I said, you know what? I do get up at night. But what I say when I have to get up is, thank goodness my kidneys work. If you've
Yeah.
lived around somebody whose kidneys don't work, it's pretty awful for them.
Yeah. So this, I have to stop you. I read a book. I think I know who you're referring to, but his name was like Fyodor Batmanagich, or he was known as Dr. Batman.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dr. Mongelich, and he
Yeah.
wrote "You're Not Sick, You're Thirsty,"
Right. Hmm.
and he wrote several books.
Right.
Uh,
Your hidden something of water. Yeah. Something
yeah, your body's cries for water, many
hidden.
cries for water.
Hmm. Hmm.
Another one was, I'll say this one softly: water cures, drugs. It was his title.
That's right. That's right.
And I really took that to heart as I look back at Paul's progression with health issues, because I know he drank plenty of liquids, but you're not going to count coffee or iced tea or juice or anything like that as your daily intake of
Water.
water.
Yeah.
And so when our bodies aren't getting enough water, all the systems are starting to rob from the other systems. And so what Paul found in starting to drink the water, now this was probably about 10 years into his kidney transplant, and his laboratory values were starting to increase in a way you don't want to see them increase.
Mm-hmm.
And creatinine clearance is one of them. And when he got the transplant, the creatinine clearance was 1.7. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then and that was the kidney functioning properly. When, as the kidney was aging, it had gotten to about 2.2 on this particular laboratory test. Well, when it gets to 2.5, they're going to say, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to go back on dialysis.
Yeah.
That kidney is failing. So what he found is he started drinking the water and just, okay, what combinations would be helpful here. Over the course of the 5 years, he always stayed on his transplant meds. You don't monkey with that if you've ever had kidney failure.
Mm-hmm.
And the the values on the creatinine clearance improved and went as low as 1.6,
Mm-hmm.
which was even better than the day of the transplant.
Wow.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was really, really great. Now he was able to reduce insulin usage, but type 1 diabetics cannot stop insulin. They have no production of insulin. So they've got to stay on it
Mm-hmm.
to keep their bodies in balance. But he was able to reduce the usage somewhat.
Sure.
And, and, and then he developed cataracts um, probably when he was about 76 or 77. And he knew the treatment. He was a veterinarian. He used to do surgery on
Mm-hmm.
animals to take out cataracts. So he said, well, I'm going to do something different. And so he made some eye drops using plasma energy water, and he put them in, um, like a glass spice jar. And he put about two-thirds water, and then he put the rest, and the water was his eye formula. The rest of the on top was olive oil. Now he could have used any oil. He could have used castor oil, olive oil, jojoba oil, coconut oil, any good organic oil. Okay. And what he would do is he would shake it up before he used it and then let it settle. And then he would put the oil in his eyes because it had the plasma energy. And people are going, oil, olive oil in your eyes?
Sure.
Well, the reason for it is as you blink, you'll blink out liquid tear, liquids like
Mm-hmm.
just plain water. But as you blink with oil, it'll slide down over the eyeball, down into here, and then it'll kind of go up and down.
Right.
You don't lose it as fast. So for 4 months, he didn't see any change. And then it gradually started improving. And he walked in one day with a flyer had gotten in the mail, and he started reading the fine print with no
Oh,
gla-
wow.
with no glasses. He had no contact lens, no glasses, no surgery, and he was able to read that. So he did clear up the cataracts. So that was really pretty exciting. And so, people will say, Paul lived to be 79. And frankly, that's, as he was telling me that summer, Lynn, my body's wearing out. When you take this much medication and that much insulin for this long a period, which was 35 years at that point, he said, things are just wearing out.
Mm-hmm.
And so he did pass when he was 79. He had outlived the ages that his folks had lived to be, and they
Yep.
hadn't lived that long with that many conditions.
Mhm.
And so, how does plasma energy help Lynn? Well, I'll give you a recent story, and it's not one I'm real proud of, but you may as well hear it. So I was handling some clove bud oil, and when I use my clean mouth combination, and I put it in a container, and I use it for a mouthwash. Well, I like to have a little essential oil in it, so I was doing a little peppermint oil and a little clove bud oil into my clean mouth plasma energy water. I didn't realize it, but I had some of the clove bud oil on my finger, and for some reason, I guess I wanted to put it in my eye, so I touched my eye. Um, I wasn't very ladylike what came out of my mouth when I did that. But what I did is I grabbed one of my spray bottles that I had right there. One was just the plasma energy station, and the other one was allergy, infection, and inflammation relief. And I just kept spraying it in my eye to rinse it out. And then what I did, because I wouldn't leave my eye alone, you know how you see these dogs wearing these big collars after they've had something do so they won't
Mhm.
bother it. I took, I just took a cotton round. This is a pretend cotton round, and I soaked it with the waters, with the eye formula and the
Oh,
inflammation
that makes sense. Sure.
pain relief, and put it on and just taped it on there. And that way, I wasn't going to use a box of Kleenex every hour because I kept messing with my eye. Well, I wore the patch for a couple days,
Mhm.
and then I took it off and I'm still, I use the eye drops all the time and kept up with them. At night, I would put, and this is a very humble version to show you, I actually have a nicer one. These are gloves I will wear when my hands get really tired from typing, because a lot of times I'll type information to put in blogs. So what
Okay.
I did is I have a pair of these under my pillow, and these have been soaked in plasma energy. Well, they've been through the laundry, so you can see they have the color of everything they've been laundered with
Ah!
stuck to them. But what I did is I just laid this over my eye at night,
Mhm.
and so I had that constant contact with the plasma energy. So 4 days later, everything was fine, and lesson learned: leave the leave the essential oils on your fingers away from your eyes.
Ooh,
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
especially the clove.
that was the case. Now Paul used an arthritis combination that he did. And he first started with some big rings that he put around his knee, and they were like
Mhm.
aquarium tubing. And he filled each one with certain waters that he wanted. He'd wear them all
Mhm.
day, but they were too uncomfortable to wear at night. And he had one knee that was crooked from birth. So, it was, yeah, it was arthritic. And so he came up with an idea, and he would put two band-aids on one side of his knee, so just a little plasma water right on the gauze part, and one
Okay.
band-aid on the other side. And he just put them on, fabric band-aids, put them on, left them on until they fell off, and then he put another set
Mhm.
on. It took away the pain.
Wow.
So, that was nice to know, because we kind of evolved from, well, you could wear pads, we could figure out how to hold pads on with a ace bandage or something, and then, well, he did the rings, and those were kind of bulky to deal with, and then he came up with the band-aids. So the issue of that is size does not matter. And we were when we were trying to figure out the energy fields, I have a pair of dowsing rods, but I must see if it's right here. Yeah. Okay, so Paul did some dowsing rods, and again, these are copper wire that he nano coated. And so what we did is we were checking the energy fields, and these are dowsing rods, like maybe you've heard of people that douse for water wells or something, and you can douse energy fields. So we would hold them like this, and when we were testing, I'd hold them like this and walk backwards until they closed, because we wanted to see how big the energy fields were.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we started out with 16 vials that made up our plasma energy station at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked back over 30 feet. And then I said, well, now we need to do the pads that we send. Um, these are what we send overseas, and I'll show you about the approximate size. So the approximate size would be a pair of pads about this size. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so we put those on a jar of water and then walked back. It was the same over 30 feet. And then I said, well, okay, but I want to know, what if it's the size of a Post it note? It was still over 30 feet.
Still the same. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was the same. Size does not matter with plasma energy, and a lot of times in our society, bigger is better and everything, and it really doesn't matter. So, um, one of
Lynn,
the
I know you guys used the pyramid, the Stargate pyramid as well. I wonder if you put the pyramid over that when you were testing the vials, if that would have enhanced the
you know,
reach of the
it
field.
might have, and at the time, we didn't know about the pyramids, and Paul came across that information when he was studying about shungite, and we were doing the shungite pendants.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in running across and coming across the Russian research,
Yeah.
then he came across Charlie.
Yeah.
And Charlie, he actually called you and talked to you about it. And Lisa, can you see the pyramid behind me?
Yeah,
It's
I can see the very tip of it over
Yep, me
your
too.
to the
Yep.
right of you. Well,
there.
if we're
Mm-hmm.
looking at you, it would be to the right of you. Yep.
Okay. And so I have that set up, and everything we make, if I have a new container of energy, it goes in the pyramid after it's all ready for me to start putting in vials. And every time I do an order that I'm sending out, it spends time under the pyramid.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
Fantastic.
yeah, and
Fantastic.
now I figured out, because the pyramid is short. It's when Paul made it, he it was his idea was he was going to try and figure out a way that he could have it over a chair. Well,
Yeah.
that never did quite pan out, but I found something called a crazy chair. I think that's the name of it. And it's actually like a beach chair, but
Yeah.
the back will stay up. And so I can just set it inside the pyramid and sit on the floor. Um, a lot of people like to get in your pyramids and sit in a like the
Chair.
lotus position.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, Lynn's 81-year-old niece don't like that.
I don't like that either.
So, and so yes, I do use this. Now, a way I've incorporated it is I take and I put the plasma energy that I want in all my liquid laundry soap, all my liquid hand soaps, and when I run the laundry, if it's something like, say, sheets for the bed, I will put maybe a cup of the plasma water in a rinse cycle and let it sit there a bit, and then go ahead and agitate it and spin it out. Once you've done that, it'll stay. Like I showed you that sorry looking little glove. I
Mm-hmm.
still wear them, they still work. And I cut the fingertips off just because I like to be able to feel the keyboard. I don't do well with gloves covering my whole hand. So it will stay on there. And so one thing I suggested for somebody with a dog with a lot of anxiety is I said, do a scarf for him. Spray a bandana and then just tie it around his neck like a lot of people like to do anyway with their dogs, and that helped. Now, when my son's dog had a raised tumor on his flank, he took the spray bottle of what we call Cansir, and you know how things are. So I spelled it KAN-SIR. But if you say the word, you get the drift of what it is.
Yeah.
And so he would just spray it occasionally on that tumor, cleared up. It took a couple months, but it cleared up and went away. So I'm just kind of giving you a broad range of different things. Now, Paul was pretty famous about making different devices, and so this is copper coils, and then in it, and we've had it so long that this is just the GANs. The water is finally all uh, disseminated because this isn't a very tight lid
Yeah.
on here. But it's been sitting out on the porch, and when we first put it there, it's an outdoor enclosed porch. So if it's 10 below here, the porch is cold.
Hmm.
And when we did the CO2, it never froze. And so one of the things we had heard is take the plasma energies that have CO2 in them and like spray your gloves and socks and things like that if you're in a winter climate to kind of help against, say, frostbite or something.
Well,
So,
one of the experiments with the Russian pyramid as well,
Yeah.
and water freezing, they couldn't get the water to freeze. How cold was it? Negative.
It was 30 below,
Yeah,
and
the
at
water
that
still wouldn't
temperature,
freeze.
that's Fahrenheit or centigrade. In that range, it's the
right,
same.
it's
Yeah.
just cold.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so again, I think with your Russian pyramid, you've got all these energy fields, that are happening. And one of the things we did with the garden series we put together is Paul suggests that you put a vial of your energy water for the garden and put it in the four corners. And then, if you can, to put an elevated stand and set a jar or, whatever on top of. And, it could end up being, is it at the top of a bush or something like that? But people are sharing that they're getting some really outstanding results in
Sure.
their gardens. And we came up with something. My daughter was here for a while in Montana, and we were working together. And we came up with a three-part garden series that was Sea Essentials, I think it's Super Soil, and Natural Pest Away. And I use that. What I did this summer, I just have a little deck. I'm in an apartment, so I don't have a yard to do. So on my deck, I planted plants, but I decided I want to see how well this garden group works. I did not change the soil out from last year, the year
Hmm.
before, and I planted all my plants and used that, and they did absolutely great. In fact, they kind of took over to where I was kind of like, I need a little more room, but they did very well. It's a real challenge to grow tomatoes here in Montana. I swore off them this year, and then I relented. I went, well, maybe I could do some cherry tomatoes. And I actually ended up with several dozen cherry tomatoes, which was, we'll have maybe some real hot weather, and then all of a sudden we'll have something that goes down below freezing at night in the middle of summer. So it's unpredictable.
Lynn,
Um,
so I'm looking at your website. Somebody was asking for help in a certain area.
Yeah.
I have abandonment issues. Which one would be good for this? But before you respond to that, I was looking at your website to see all the different products you offer, and there's so many different ones. And I'll just read a few different ones, you guys. Beekeepers package. There's one for beekeepers. There's one for anti-aging, anxiety relief, arthritis, autism, Alzheimer's, um, cat food, plasma energy. There's a clear mind, cold relief, super cat food, DNA support, diabetes. I mean, the list goes on. Energy booster, energy balancer, eczema. The list just goes on and on, guys. So I put her website at the bottom here. Please check it out and go to her products and see all the different things that they have to offer. But could you give the recommendation for this person, please? They have abandonment issues and want to know which one would be good for that.
Well, and I'll preface this saying that I don't think any of the three of us are medical people, and we're not giving any medical advice. So here's what I would do with the abandonment issues is I would definitely look at the anxiety, and I would also look at peace would be a good one. Now, a lot of times I will combine things. And so I have one that's called Soul Support. It's spelled SOLE, but the intention behind it is SOUL. And again, sometimes if I think I'm stepping on things, I will do that with spelling on purpose. And so there's one that maybe that I might look at in that situation. There was one that we put together called Be Brave. So there's quite a group of them, and we've tried to do a lot of videos covering many of the things. Now, Paul and I did about 4 dozen videos before he died, and bless his heart, he was, Lynn, we need to do videos. I know. We need to do videos. I know. That means Lynn's got to figure out how to do the camera, how to. I know what it means. So I kept putting, and I'm so glad I didn't put it off any longer because we did get those videos with him in them. And YouTube has taken down a couple of them. Paul was very direct in his speech in a couple of videos, and so goodness.
Well, it's crazy that we have to bounce around like that, and
well, it is. So
just can't come out and say it.
I moved him over to Brighteon, and so I've got quite a. I probably have about 300 videos over there, and then there's probably about 50 of them. Now I just post on YouTube, and it'll be a minute to 2 minutes, and I'm just saying I have a new video over on Brighteon.
Yeah. Well,
and so that's the way I handle that.
Yeah.
And I do blogs, as I move to do them. It's a good thing I don't have a boss telling me, here's your schedule. So Lisa, on the homepage, on the right side of the homepage, you'll see titles, and as you go through the titles, it just keeps on scrolling on and on and on for whatever I've done. And sometimes I'm hitting sensitive topics, and I just figure I'll say what I have to say. Nobody has to agree. They don't have to read it all. They don't have to listen to it all. And then I also have a section called Free Reports. And I did transcribe a 2-hour workshop that Dr. Botmangelich did on the water. And that's under the free reports. They're easy to access. You just go to free reports and scroll through. If you want to read one, put in a first name, put in an email address, and then you can download the PDF for the report. So that's something I provided. And then we have frequently asked questions and testimonials. And we've just got some really great testimonials from people. I have one, and the people said, well, we still have the box you mailed us with the plasma energy a year later on our guinea pigs page, and let us tell you why. And Ella the guinea pig was about 9 years old when they got it, and she had large tumors and was it just moving very slowly. And they said, well, it's about time to say goodbye to Ella. But what happened is they set that box on her cage, and they noticed that she started becoming more active and feeling better. So when they wrote me a year later, they said Ella the guinea pig is still alive and she has no tumors and she's very active.
Wow. Yeah.
So sometimes people are really maybe getting a little snarky with questions. I'll say, let me have Ella answer your question on how does this stuff work.
Well, it's just common sense to me that we need to start trying different things. You know, we have a barbaric medical system here with the only options they give you is cut, burn, and poison, and we're the sickest that we ever have been, you know?
Exactly.
So,
No, it's
and
true.
now's the time, and I'm really eager to see, hopefully, this transition go a lot faster with new people in place now in our government, so.
Lynn,
Well,
I,
I have to agree. Go ahead, Charlie.
no, I'm sorry. I was just going to say I'm interested in finding out how you and Paul go about uh, finding specific remedies or solutions. Are you using different objects to make the plasma energy? How does that work? How do you figure out how to come up with a say an anti-cancer?
Right. Well, that's a good question, and there were certain things on the periodic table that Paul had already done: CO2, zinc, calcium. C, now CH3 is a booster, and you wouldn't use that with cancer, but gold, silver. So we had a lot of what I would call the basic things on the periodic table. When we
Mhm.
got around to doing that, what really spurred things on when I did Cancer Plus, we already had Cancer, was I read an article that somebody had used benbendazole. And um, it's Joe's story of using that. And I do think that's somewhere on the website, either on a blog or on free reports. He was at the phase of treatment where they said, we can't do anything more for you. It's time for you to go home and get your affairs in order. And he was going to miss the birth of a new grandchild. And, you've got 2 months to live. And amazingly, a veterinarian suggested to him, why don't you try using some fenbendazole, which is known to be a dewormer for mammals.
Okay.
Well, the man wrote his story 2 years later about turning things around in his life.
Oh,
And so
wow.
when I read that, I said, you know what, we want to get some of this. And so we also added to it that because there's a lot of information out there about some of the different mushrooms and different herbs, different things that people have used to address, say, a situation like that. And so we took all of those things and they all went into, and that's why this is a good one to show. So if you imagine the bottom of this jar when we're starting to make the GANs, it would have powder, it would have herbs. I might have some osha root in it, which is the Native Americans use it a whole lot in treating for health issues.
Okay.
And so when and people will ask us, can you make something of this? And that's where this came from. And it was a woman who had asked me to take different supplements of hers
Hmm.
and break them down into a GAN. So that was in process for 5 or 6 months. And so when it's all broken down, then it's going to finally go into the vials and be used as the treatment. Now, I had one, we had one friend who used it. He had stage 4 bone cancer, And he kept using it all along. Well, he was at stage 4 for like 3 or 4 years. But the sad thing, Lisa, you kind of touched on this, is they they experimented a lot on him. I'll just say that. Oh, we have something new that just came out.
Mm,
We're going to add that to your protocol. And so, I think finally, but I think he did stick around for a long time given the circumstances.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. So that's and I want to add here, intention is hugely important. Um, and Paul always said, he sat with great intention when he was working with things. And
Hmm.
if you remember Masaru Emoto, the Japanese
Sure,
scientist
sure.
who took the messages of water and
Hmm.
put messages on all the jars of water, and
Right.
then Crowson looked under the microscope. Well, that was his intention for each jar of water. And so we always say water carries memory and water carries intention. I'm 70% water, so are you, or somewhere in that range.
Right.
So the
mhm.
intention in my water is all the plasma energies that I've added to it. So I kind of get a little bit of humor out of people who roll their eyes if I'm around them and, what do you do or something. And I go into the short explanation until their eyes glaze over. And it's kind of like, oh, really? Well, it's okay because they're sitting next to a giant container of plasma energy water.
Sure. Oh my.
So, and our energy fields, they can be called torsion fields, energy fields, whatever. They're going to be impacted by the conditions within our bodies. So I look at that as a protective area. Now, Lisa, I don't know if you know this part, but there had been stories that came out when Hurricane Maria hit Dominica. And there was a man who had studied plasma energy and had taken some of his to his parents. He lived in Mexico and went to see him over in Dominica and had put a big jar in the garden. And when the hurricane happened, a couple years later, that jar was in the garden. When he finally got to Dominica, it took 3 weeks to get there. He had no idea what had happened. 90% of the island was destroyed. And when he got to his parents' place, within a 30-foot perimeter, everything was intact. The house was untouched. The plants, the leaves, the flowers, they
Yeah.
were all untouched. Outside of it, it looked like a war zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything was
Yeah.
stripped bare. I knew that, and so we had a flood here a couple years ago, and it the creek always will seek its original path, and the original path was down Main Street. I live a half a block off Main Street, and the creek is 2 blocks away. Well, it broke through and came down Main Street until 14th Street, and it turned, and then it made a left turn onto a street called Platt. Well, I'm on 13th Street, a half a block from Platt.
Hmm.
And all day I was watching the lot next door, that our driveway and that lot were about this far below the street level. It's just how the sidewalk was, and the street had been built up over time.
Yep.
The water never came across.
Ah,
And it was behind us, it was to the east of us, and it raged for hours. And most of the basements,
Hmm.
well, all the basements east of me were flooded. And
hmm.
the house behind me was flooded. And there's 5 apartments where I live. Right behind me, there's one apartment that you step down into just one step, definitely below street level. And right behind the fence where that apartment backed up to, it was all flooded at the neighbor's place.
Mm-hmm.
It never came into his apartment. And when I asked him later, he was gone and had friends clearing stuff out of his apartment. He figured it was going to flood. And he said, well, Dustin, what do you think happened? And he said, I was gone working disaster relief somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I knew my apartment was going to flood. And he said, all I can say is it must be some of that plasma stuff you talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, okay. Mm-hmm.
yeah, so, and my kids were very concerned. I said, guys, I think I'm going to be fine, you know. But
Yeah.
so intention, energy fields, and when we added B9 Korean salt plasma energies, it's from a special area in the ocean by Korea, and they have. I think it's the ocean version of shungite, with a lot of things on everything
Mm-hmm.
on the periodic table, and then maybe some. And when we made a GANs of that at the request of somebody in Korea who sent it to us, it was the energy fields on it were 57 feet, but I had to stop because I ran into a wall.
Ah,
So after that,
that's
Paul always
amazing.
added it to
Yeah.
just a few drops to whatever we were working with
Mm-hmm.
to enhance the energy fields.
Question about the process, Lynn. Do you know if there's something specific that you all are doing to make these energies permanent in the water?
Charlie, I would say it's intention.
Okay. Okay.
Well,
I
I was reading some of the information that you sent me as well. And when you held the jar up earlier, it looked just like Ormus, and I make
Yeah.
Ormus. And I was
Oh,
just
okay.
scrolling through the documents that you sent, and it said that to utilize plasma energy in health issues, it's necessary to break down matter into a monoatomic state where all chemical bonds of compounds and molecules are broken, and atoms that would normally be connected to other atoms in a molecular compound are now alone. So that's exactly what I do to make Ormus as well. So I wonder how similar they are, the
Me
I
too.
would
GANs
say
and the Ormus.
I'd say quite, and now you see this is all settled out.
And you
That
mentioned lye earlier as well, and that's how I use the wet method to make Ormus with lye as
Okay,
well.
so I would say with your Ormus that in my experience, you're working with some plasma energy fields.
And it looks like a cloud. Like once it settles, it looks like it has a mind of its own. Like it's like just floating in there like a cloud.
Oh, okay, yeah, and this is a little different where it does settle. Um, it's it's interesting because I think that what I read you at the very beginning is there's a lot we don't know, and George Kavasilis was saying we have imperial knowledge that is techno knowledge, and then we have natural knowledge. And to the distress of those that like the technical aspects, I'm so sorry. Not all the um, there we go. Sorry about that.
No
It's okay.
problem.
With the natural knowledge, you're not going to have all the scientific measurement bells and whistles yet that you may see. In other words, Lisa, do you have a way to measure the energy of the Ormus you make?
No,
Yeah,
no. But just
exactly.
by myself, I'm like the tuning fork, I would say.
Right, right,
Oh, yeah.
exactly, exactly.
But I
So
really believe, like you said, intention plays a big role in it. You can feel it kind of communicating with you still after you make it.
it really does. And we did one of the things we did something called peace. And Paul and I did an intention for peace that I like to share with people if I can find it quickly, and if I can't, I won't. But it's with that intention. Here's something that I've extended it to. We have something called mosquito relief, and I told people add some peace to that, because you have where you don't want the mosquitoes, but then you also So make a spray that you put around you can spray on yourself. And what happened a couple years ago is people down south were contacting me and saying, we've had a release of some genetically modified mosquitoes, and
Oh
what
yeah.
worked before is not working. And I thought about it and I said, you know what? Add new tech frequency relief and add what I call Heavenly Thunderbolt. And Heavenly Thunderbolt was something that was put together when I found out about all the venoms that were being presented to people
Mm-hmm.
this way. And so they did that and no more problem. So whatever those had been modified to, there was an issue. And I wanted to go back and say when I used the natural pest away in my deck, I still had bees. So I don't have a fly swatter. I've sprayed plasma energy all around doors and windows, and I think the house probably just kind of exudes plasma energy at this point. But um, I'll get four to seven flies in the spring and 4 to 7 flies in the fall, and that's it. They're gone. I don't see them the rest of the time. And when I do see them again, if they fly by, if I ever see them again, they're at the back door waiting to be let out. Like, let me out of here. So I do have one funny video, and I talk about that. And it was October where there were a few flies, waiting to come in out of the cold. Honestly, I had one come in and land on my face during the video, and I went, okay, we have a new star in the video. And it's here to say, I told you so. So, um, and once the video was over, I never saw the fly again. So it could have been Paul messing with me, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Now, do you
Lynn,
have to protect? Sorry, Charlie, go ahead.
no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
I was just going to say, do you have to protect the vials from outside EMFs like electrical magnetic frequencies or anything?
You know what? I really would say that probably a lot of these things and the intention that we had, because they were placed in windows, and then there's more that are, the square ones I held up. Paul did some that were about this size, and he put them at the end of copper, and then we just taped the copper with the two little hanging plates off the on the window. So the windows and doors are all covered, and a lot of people were putting shungite
Oh,
into
yeah.
paint and painting their exterior walls. Well, I already told you what I can do with a drop of clove bud oil. Can you imagine me with a paintbrush?
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually did that with my beehives to protect them from electrical magnetic frequencies.
Okay,
Mixed the
sure.
shungite powder inside the paint.
Well, what I
Yeah.
did is I took our new tech frequency release, which had combinations that included shungite powder. And so I just went and sprayed all the exterior walls and curtains and around the windows and doors.
Oh
So
gosh.
that's
Nice.
that's the way I did that. And then when we would have we have like Paul made devices like this to put on electronic things, and then we scaled it down to a smaller size, more like, I don't know if I can find.
Charlie's a pro at making those. He started out with the tensor rings
Yeah.
Okay,
before he
yeah,
got into pyramids.
we have this size that we did
Mm-hmm.
for just putting on phones and well, in fact, yeah, my phone here has one right on the back. Can you see that?
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Sure. Sure.
and I hold my phones like this. I don't put them next to my head. So
Right.
um, that's how I deal with phone, and it doesn't go with me when I go on a walk. Um, Now, what kind of energy fields do I exude? I don't know. Maybe I'm not a threat, and I'll give a short story. My kids have said, keep your head on a swivel when you're out and about, Mom. Okay. And I'm walking through the neighborhood before we had snow or anything. And I use walking sticks when I go walking because we have a lot of ruts in sidewalks and streets. And um, so I decided to walk on the street side of some parked cars because the sidewalks were not so great where that last block was. And car one, car two, car three, and I glanced over. There's a moose the size of a car sitting in a yard about 8 feet from me. And I nodded at the moose and just kept right on walking. And I thought, well, maybe with walking sticks, I look like more of their four-legged friends. So, did I go back and take a picture of the moose? No, neither of us were aggravated. Leave that one alone.
Yeah, see, I would die if I saw a moose because I would want to pet it.
Well, yeah, they can be pretty fussy,
I saw,
and
yeah.
especially if it's a cow that has a calf and you wear around. So so I think those energy fields. I set my energy fields up to be a protection, and it's my intention that my consciousness, as part of me and part of my energy fields, takes care of what I may not have my head on a swivel about at the right time.
Right.
So I look at it as an opportunity to expand the energy around me.
Right. So I've got a question. If people are interested in using your products, Lisa has mentioned that you've got a lot of information on your website. If people want to contact you directly, can they do that to talk to you about what their issues are and have you make recommendations?
Well, here's what I suggest to people. First of all, I suggest that they look at a few of the videos and read some of the information, because if you just come to what's plasma energy, I've
Yeah.
done it enough times, Charlie, that what happens is I can tell you even a few hours later, people aren't going to remember most of what we talked about.
Yeah.
So if we have dialogue after they have a little information
That's
under
good.
their belt, so to speak,
Yeah.
it's Lynn at plasmaenergysolution.com. And I encourage people because, again, I don't want to prescribe. And so what I tell people is go through the product page and see what resonates with you. You may have some ideas, but read through all of them and you may go, oh yeah, maybe that would be good.
Okay.
And it's not that I'm trying to give people the opportunity to be proactive about that and not have somebody be prescriptive to them and say, oh, well, you
Got it.
need this, and this, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and so that's the way I like to address that. And while we're on that, I did discontinue PayPal, and PayPal, it turns out, owns Square, and they own Venmo, and on and on. Well, they came up with a policy that had I fulfilled an order and made it, they were still not going to send the funds to me for 3 or 4 weeks. And I didn't find that to be acceptable. So now I always send it out after I get an order. Here's the way you can pay. By snail mail, you can send me a check. You can send me a money order, postal money order, a bank draft. If a personal check is sent, I will hold your order until I get the check. But if you send me a money order, a bank draft, and just send me a photograph of it, I'll send the order right away.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to be inconvenient in this age
Right.
of plastic and technology, but I am being inconvenient, and I understand that. I occasionally will do foreign orders, but I pulled back a few months ago. Things were getting so wonky everywhere. I may revisit that. Maybe things are going to
Yeah.
stabilize a little,
Well,
and so I'll revisit that.
The shipping costs are much higher for us to ship internationally. I know that, and that keeps it
Hopefully that changes
keeps it
too.
challenging. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
hope so.
yeah,
Let's hope so.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, and I do have a little, I do have a handling and shipping charge. I didn't do that for years, but as I kept going to the post office in the last couple of years, honey,
Yeah.
an increase. We've had an increase. We've had an increase. And it was like, okay, I'm now I'll bite the bullet and go ahead and add that. So I do a lot of specials. This month I'm doing a buy one get one free. So
I saw
if
that.
you buy
Yeah.
a vial, you can select any vial up to the same price and get the second vial free. Now you can't pay for the lesser price vial and ask for the more expensive price vial.
Ah!
I'm a good sport, but I'm not that good of a sport.
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
So every month I change the special though. So this will be good till midnight Pacific time, January 31st. And then sometimes
Cool.
the special
So,
will run over. Sometimes I come up with something new.
yeah.
But I am trying to make it to where people can manage things. And the other thing I want to mention, excuse me, is I was looking for my water. Here we go. When you set up your jar, and let's say we're going to, oh, yeah, let's say this is my mother source jar, and I had either put the vial inside or attached to the side. Once it sits overnight, and you started it out with filter or distilled water, once that sits overnight, you can take water out of here and put in a vial and give it to friends or family. That vial is going to have the same strength as this vial, and it's going to have the same strength of whatever made it. So, what kind of a business plan is that? I ask you.
Ah, not very good.
So, so anyway, that's yes, you can share it with family and friends. Now, I will generally, I don't send liquids out of the country. I send pairs of pads that have been soaked in the particular plasma energies. What happened a couple years ago, I sent the pads to someone in Ireland and they didn't get them. And they said, I think the mail got confiscated. So I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm going to send it and I'll send some instructions with it. I sprayed a piece of printer paper and I put some words on it, and they just said, when you get this paper, cut it up 2/3 and 1/3 for each energy that I've sent you, and fold it up and put it in cover it with plastic and put it on your jars. Well, I heard from the son of the woman who owned it, who lived in a different part of Ireland, and he said, this is Brian. We love your waters. I want to order some more. Would you please send it to me on printer paper? So I
Right.
did. And so I just want you to understand it can travel on whatever you decide. If you want to put it on cloth, you can do that. Just
Hmm.
however, I like to do it on something that I think is going to hold up. So
Sure, sure.
the plastic, the pads that I make are completely covered with plastic and have plastic packing tape securing them shut. So that's it. In the winter, I send plastic vials. And I came across a statement from the scientist, and he said, you know, a lot of you are getting all worked up over plastic. He said, could I remind you plastic is carbon and so are you?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so the vials, you're not ingesting any water out of the vials. The vials are the holder for the energy.
Right.
I send plastic because with screw top lids that are taped on, and I send that because I tested them, I froze them, took them out of the freezer, threw them on the floor. They didn't break. I went, that's good for me. The glass ones, will break
Sure.
in cold weather. So
Sure.
that's the
Sure.
only difference.
About how long does it take? Let's say I get a vial from you and I want to make one for my nephew. And how long will it take to energize the water inside, from the, or how long will it take to re-energize?
Let
Make
it
new
sit
water.
overnight. And once I take water out of a jar or out of my main drinking station, I don't let it go down past a third, because then you could just add filtered water and it's ready to use right away. If you drain it all the way down, then you're going to have to let it sit overnight again. And I don't see a point to doing that. Now, some people will write me and say, oh, do I need to clean out my plasma energy station? Plasma energy station is just a word group that Paul and I came up with.
Yeah.
And so it's just energies, okay? And now I just send it out in one single vial. When we started, we were sending it out in a bunch of little vials, and finally went, why are we doing this? It was a labor intensive part of management stepped in and said, why are you doing that? Oh yeah, why are we doing that?
Yeah.
So it's it's effective whether it's come to you on paper, in plastic, in glass. But Charlie, just you can set up whatever you're going to do, say for the nephew. If you're going to see him in person, then you can hand him a vial. What I do when I mail the plastic vials, Charlie, I mailed something to you. It was covered in bubble
Right.
wrap, and
It was, yes.
and then it's put in a bubble wrap envelope.
Yep.
And uh, I was it frozen when you got it?
No, it wasn't. It was fine.
Yeah. So it generally doesn't freeze, but I know when it leaves my little town, it can
Right.
sit in Billings
Yeah.
overnight, and just in the whole process, there's a chance things are going to freeze and break, and
Well,
everybody's.
I can guarantee you this week if you'd sent it, it would have been frozen.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, we had that a few days ago, and now we're up over the zero part
Yeah.
again.
Well, we're up over zero now, but yeah, we've been below zero at
Yeah,
night. Yeah.
yeah, and it's common for that to happen where I am, since I'm
Yeah.
out in Montana, but I,
Right.
I think it's shocking for people that aren't used to it in
Yeah.
your area. So, and yeah, Charlie, if you were going to mail it, you could mail it in a bubble wrapper, and you could even send it if you wanted to make the paper pairs of pads. And I show how to do that on the website. It
Oh,
is
great.
it
Okay.
is more labor intensive,
Yeah.
and but it's certainly the way to send things if they're going to go out of the country. You can
Sure.
send it in um, first class international mail if you're thoughtful about how you do your envelope.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Cool. Now, tell me, explain to me the definition that you and Paul are using of plasma, and I want to make sure that I understand it. Plasma, in my research, means an intermediate state between the ether and solid material matter. But is that kind of what you're using as a working definition for plasma?
Yes, we would say that it's in an energy, a non-matter energy state,
Okay.
and the so what that means is you're not seeing all the fields that are in this little vial where the water finally dispersed, but you still see a little of the was actually some GANs in the water. And so
Hmm.
that's what you're seeing in the bottom of this is some CO2 GANs. And most of the time, people's vials will be clear. Once in a while, I may have there may have been enough in jostling the jar and getting water out and stuff, that they'll end up with a little bit of the GANs. I certainly don't intend on sending out all my GANs because I'd have to make it all over again.
Yeah.
but they'll say, there's something brown in the bottom of my vial. Is everything okay? And I'm going, yeah, everything's fine. You got a little more than uh,
Bargain for.
yeah, that I bargained for. So
Right, right.
yeah, yeah. So it's just fine. It's just gas in the atomic uh, solid state. And so we used to talk about the matter state and the plasma state. And the matter state was what you could pick up and hold of whatever it was, and the plasma state would be the fields. And when we tell people, they'll say, "Well, how's my body going to know what to do?" You've got over 400 energies in your plasma energy station.
Hmm.
It's like a giant buffet in your body. It's only going to pick and choose what it needs at any given time, and it's just going to ignore the rest. So you don't have to be okay at 4 o'clock. I better take this energy, and you know, unless there's a specific protocol. And the only protocol that there ever was, Paul did set up a diabetes protocol that he wrote out, and it's a digital product along with the plasma energies, and and otherwise, I'm just basically, thank you for what you do today for my body with my plasma energy waters.
Sure, sure, sure. Oh, amazing.
There's You can't do things. I say you can't do things wrong because people are very worried about, well, how about how I set it up, or is this going to affect it? The only thing I found that will affect it, there's a couple things. One is when they decide they need to take the jar, open the jar or the container, and let the
Hmm.
plasma get some sunshine. No, what the plasma is going to get is a lot of spores, and you're probably going to end up with algae
Ah,
in that jar. They'll say, my energy station just changed green. And I said, well, by any chance, did you set it in the sun and did you open it up?
yes.
Yes, they did. So that's an instance of where you might have an issue. Another issue is, I say, use any good um, filtered water, distilled water. People ask me about structured water. As long as it's a purified water, that's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah.
Now, I said spring water, but I need to define that. We have a spring 12 miles out of town that comes out. Somebody put a pipe in it and it comes straight out of the side of the mountain. That's spring water to me. So when I said spring water, a lot of people went to the grocery store and got the
Oh,
Oh,
gallons. Well, not all spring water is equal.
no.
Um, and some of it is just outrageous because it has a nice label and that's about it. But the other thing with well water, if people will ask me about that, I said, if you've got good well water, try it. But I've had them say, well, my plasma energy water's it started smelling funky and it doesn't taste good. And I said, check your well. And in every instance, they've had a contamination happen in their well.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
So that's something to be aware of. And unfortunately, we seem to be having a lot more of that than maybe used
Mhm.
to happen with people.
Sure, sure. Oh my.
hmm.
So the I was gonna try with the let me see if I can find my peace intention, because I really feel strongly that we can pass the peace around. And let me I tried to do things somewhat alphabetically. Let's see if I actually did that.
Mhm.
I was putting things together for Lisa, and
Mhm.
and I'm not finding it. While I look, ask me another question because maybe I can do two things at once.
Well,
Lisa, do you have any questions?
Lynn, you did mention something about a dome. How you protect yourself with a dome,
Yeah.
utilizing the frequent or the GONS, the plasma.
Yes, if you've seen the torsion fields, Do you know the figure of the man with the energy fields around him, the torsion fields? Um, there's a pretty famous
The Da
painting.
Vinci picture? Is
Yes,
that
yeah.
okay.
Okay. Okay.
And so when I'm talking about my energy fields, that's what I'm referencing. And yeah, I'm sorry. I'm. Oh, you know why? I printed on both sides of the paper, and I was only looking at one side.
Okay.
You know, how's she doing at the multitasking here? Um,
That'll double your chances of finding it.
Here we go. My chances increased exponentially when I started looking on the other side of the page. So, okay, so this is an intention Paula and I put together for peace. All plasma energy that originated from Paul and Lynn's efforts joins every other bit of plasma energy that originated from their efforts wherever that plasma energy is in the world. On the land, in the waters of the rivers, lakes, oceans, in the air, and in the clouds above. All that plasma energy brings Paul and Lynn's intention everywhere on, above, around, and below the surface of planet Earth, that all living things are filled with love, peace, joy, freedom, prosperity, and well being, with the ethics and morality to support the love, peace, joy, freedom, prosperity, and well being of all living beings on planet Earth, including the living being, our home, planet Earth. All of like intentions are invited to join this intention. And so, how do we spread that around? Well, maybe some of the water ended up in the creek, and then maybe it
Yeah.
ended up in the river that ended up in the Missouri, that ended up in the Mississippi, that ended up in the Gulf, and maybe some other people around the country have done something similar. And
Hmm.
they've, at different times, people have taken, especially the peace, and said, we're going to do what we can around our place. And you can put, if you have the energy fields in your house, go out in your yard and you can go out, say it goes to the walls of the house, then go out 30 feet and put some of the energy. Now, what are you going to do if it's a grass yard or something that you can't stick a little jar or vial out there? Um, I had one man who sprayed popsicle sticks and then just jammed them down into the earth. And
Wow.
it was interesting because he was telling me later, he said, I don't live in a very nice neighborhood in my city, and sometimes I have a little riffraff going on out in front of the house that
Hmm.
I'd rather not have going on. And so he did his popsicle sticks all around the perimeter of his property, and he said the riffraff moved across the street and they never came to his sidewalk again.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and so then he said, I haven't had a not very nice neighbor, so I put a few more popsicle sticks along the fence line over there. And he said the neighbor moved it about a month later.
Well, using that as a case in point, now what specific one did he want to use for that issue?
He was using the plasma energy station actually, but
Okay, but was
yeah,
there a specific frequency or that he
I
was?
think his intention put the frequency
Okay.
that was needed with
Okay.
energy fields. And so you could have done, I have one that's called Heavenly Protection. I have one that's called um, uh, Love and Vitality. It's got something else with it. I have one that's called, and I don't usually do this, but this one I called it what it is, Meanness Buster Plus. And
Ah.
I made it because somebody said my friend is a teacher and she's having an awful time. The students are so hateful to each other. And this was an elementary class.
Wow. Mhm.
And I noticed a couple years ago they put some big cell towers down the street by the
That'll
school.
do it. That'll do it. Yep.
And so I said, well, if she'll use some energy, if she'll spray some energy around the room, I'll make something for her. So I put some energies together, and I'm sure I used anxiety and peace and, whatever
Mhm.
I was putting together. Well, and then I said, just go in when the room is empty, spray it around the room, spray it with what intention you have for it, and that's all. That's all you're going to do with it. Well, I got a text a couple of weeks later, and she said, "I want to thank you. Things are so much better."
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And so somebody said, "Well, maybe you should call that friendliness plus or something." I said, "No, in this case, it was meanness buster plus. Just enough of meanness."
Sure.
So, I think there's a lot we can do with our energies and our intentions, and I just encourage people to embrace it and be creative with it.
Fantastic. Well, our time's about up, Lynn. So, are there any parting comments you'd like to make to the audience before we sign off?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you guys for having me on, and I would
Oh, our pleasure.
to get in. Charlie, I want to thank you for the information you have shared with the books you've written. And I showed this to Lisa. I said, I want to be sure and show this to Charlie. Now, I want you to look real closely. Lisa, can you see this for what I'm trying to show?
Yes.
Charlie, if you'll look right about there, you'll see it like the shape of a head, an Egyptian looking,
Yes. Uh huh.
and there's Egyptian hieroglyphs, and this is south of where I live,
Really? How
off
about
the
that?
Forest Trail. And they went back after the flood, the couple who had found this, because they thought they had seen maybe an opening, and they
Mm-hmm.
said they couldn't get to it, that there were so many rocks that came down, uh, impacted by the rains and the flood that we had, that they couldn't get to it. So we never know what's around us until
No.
somebody goes out exploring.
Yeah.
But I, what,
Or, yeah. If
you
I
know,
had a backhoe, I told Lynn I would be dangerous. I'd be digging holes everywhere.
and Charlie, I mentioned to you about the dolmens and the Montana monoliths.
Mm-hmm.
Evidently, the monoliths here in Montana, and they're
Yep.
not in the area that I'm in that I know of, but
Right.
they're some of the largest. Well, they are the largest in the U.S.
Yeah, we've
Wow.
invited I'm friends with the woman who discovered them, and I've invited her on the show. She's just been so busy, and I think somebody else is trying to take credit for that now, and
They
she's been
are,
been
and
fighting that now.
her name is Judy.
Yep.
Her, I don't remember her last name, but she's done a tremendous amount of work and explaining and videotaping and taking people. And you're right, somebody else now um, think they have bigger boots, and
Yeah.
they're kind of coming in over the top of it. But we know about it because of Judy and her husband out exploring, not with a backhoe, but
Right.
just being very observant. So there's many wonderful things around us, and for any of you that just want to enhance your well-being, I invite you to take a look at our plasma energies. And Charlie, I really appreciate getting to talk with you again,
Oh,
and
sure. Oh, my pleasure.
to
And
meet
I
you.
and I do want to tell you, Carol, because of the holiday, she only really started on her stuff last week, so
Okay,
we don't have any reports yet. But she is actively, involved in this whole decision as to whether to get cataract surgery or not, and
okay,
she's going to hold off on it and try this out and see what happens. So I
okay. Well,
look forward to being able to give you some results here sometime soon.
and are you guys drinking the water? Have you been able to set that up yet?
Not yet. No,
Okay,
no,
yeah.
no.
So,
But we'll do
yeah,
that.
and all you'll have to do is put that. It's in a plastic container, so just tape it to the outside of
Yeah.
your filtered drinking container. I recommend to people that they use something with a spigot because they will use it more often.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah,
Makes sense.
and
Makes sense.
put it. don't put it in the utility room, put it in the kitchen.
Right.
That's where you
Well,
go and drink water.
we have some places where we can put it, so we're looking forward to trying that out.
Okay, well, good. And
All right.
thank you so much, everybody, and thanks for joining.
Okay. Thank you for being with us, and we look forward to maybe having you back on again sometime again in the future.
Well,
Yep.
thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day and stay warm.
All right.
Absolutely.
Same
And
here.
everybody, thank you for tuning in today. With knowledge, intention, and energy, we can transform ourselves and our world. So until next time, stay curious. See you then.
Bye.